Hello everybody, my name is Ryan Gest, Elections Data Fellow here at Decision Desk HQ, and welcome back to another video on our YouTube channel. This is going to be a preview of the Georgia runoff Senate election coming up on December 6th. Stop us if you've heard this before. Georgia's Senate election is coming down to a runoff. Unlike last year's runoff, yes, the dual Georgia Senate runoff was held in January of 2021. This year's between incumbent Democrat Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel will not be for control of the Senate this time around, but it's still an extremely important election that has received significant attention from both national parties. Let's start out with how we got here. After all of the results were counted on November 8th, Warnock was just shy of 50% of the vote with 49.45% to Herschel Walker's 48.49%. Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver received just over 2% of the remaining vote to force a runoff. Amazingly, out of 3,935,929 total votes cast, Warnock was just 21,825 votes shy of reaching 50% and avoiding a runoff altogether. Notably as well, Walker still ran significantly behind fellow Republican and Governor Brian Kemp, who routed Democrat Stacey Abrams by a comfortable 8% margin. Now moving on, how did Warnock achieve a plurality of the votes on election night? According to an analysis by Decision Desk HQ data fellow Zachary Danini, it came down to an emerging Democratic coalition made up of fewer black voters and, perhaps surprisingly to many, an increasing number of suburban educated white voters. Voters in most black counties composed about 5% less of the Democratic base than 2 years ago, while voters in the most educated counties composed about 10% more of the Democratic base compared to 2020. Of course, the difference in voter turnout between presidential elections and midterms account for part of this shift, but it is still a trend that should help Warnock in this runoff, as voters with higher education attainment tend to turn out at higher rates and therefore be overrepresented in lower turnout elections such as a runoff. You can read Zach's full analytical article in the description down below, but let's move on to the runoff next week on Tuesday, December 6th. Much to the disappointment of us election nerds, we have very little polling data for this race thus far. In fact, we only have one poll that shows Warnock leading Walker by 4%, and our forecast model for this race currently rates it as lean Democrat, with Warnock having a 74% chance of winning. Now, what does each candidate need to do to win this seat? For Warnock, historically, Georgia runoffs do tend to favor Republicans as the Democrats' black base turned out at lower rates than the Republicans' suburban and exurban base. But now, as suburbs and exurbs begin to trend toward the Democratic Party, the runoff math is a little bit more unclear. Although Warnock was able to win just enough swing voters in the first round to survive the drop in black turnout, a further decrease in the runoff election could be too much for Democrats to pull through. That said, black voters in Georgia are still an exceptionally reliable Democratic voter bloc, and the Warnock campaign needs to figure out a way to turn them out on December 6th, especially in areas outside of Atlanta such as Macon, Columbus, Augusta, and Savannah. For Walker, on the other hand, first and foremost, he will look to rekindle the historical GOP runoff advantage with strong rural and exurban white turnout. That said, do keep in mind that although educated voters are trending towards Democrats in recent elections, Walker still managed to put up impressive margins in some of these more educated and exurban areas outside of the Atlanta metro area. Since educated voters are more likely to turn out in runoff elections, Walker will hope that turnout success in areas like Forsyth and Cherokee County can offset increased Democratic turnout in places like Cobb and Fulton County. Now remember, polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will have the fastest results on election night on our website and on our Twitter page at Decision Desk HQ. Follow us for key race updates and an eventual projection. Until then, thanks for watching the DDHQ preview. We'll see you next time.